Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, and welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis, and I am so glad you are here today. Last week, we talked about something really powerful in our love series that we are doing. And we talked about operating in the frequency of love in our everyday lives. What it means to choose to love as an energy, as a posture, as a way of being, not just something we feel, but something we practice in our relationships and our work and the way we move through the world. And I want to start today by saying this very clearly because it matters. Operating in the frequency of love does not mean abandoning yourself. It does not mean tolerating what hurts. It does not mean that we're going to shrink or we're going to silence ourselves or overgiving to keep the peace. And it does not mean choosing everyone else at the expense of your own well-being. Because loving others well requires loving yourself deeply too. And that's what today's episode is all about. Today, we're talking about how to love without losing yourself. So, here is something I've learned both personally and through walking alongside so many of women over the years. Women don't struggle with loving. That's not really the struggle. We struggle with loving without self-abandonment. I want to explain this. Most women are incredibly loving. We're intuitive, we're generous, we are typically emotionally aware, but somewhere along the way, love became tied to a sacrifice, to endurance, to being the one who understands and who adjusts and holds everything together. And slowly, without almost realizing it, we start leaving ourselves behind. And that does not happen all at once. It happens in these very small moments over time. So let me give you some examples of what I mean. When we say yes and we mean no. When we swallow our feelings to avoid conflict, when we minimize our needs because it's not that big of a deal. And then, of course, this is always the classic, when we stay quiet to keep the peace. That's how we lose ourselves moment by moment, very quietly. And I want you to hear this with compassion. I don't want you to hear this with judgment. I know I say that a lot because sometimes when we're listening to these episodes, or even when I am recording these episodes, I have to remember not to judge myself because, man, it is so easy to do sometimes. And I want you to hear that you didn't choose this pattern because you're weak. You are not weak. You learned it because at one point it helped you to feel safe or connected or maybe even loved at one point of your life. So let's talk. And you guys, I am sorry, I'm getting over a cold. This is why I'm sounding a little nasally. So if you hear the little hums along the way, that is why. Okay, so let's talk about why this shows up for so many women, because this doesn't come out of nowhere. I promise you. Most of us, like I said earlier, learned very early on that love meant being a certain way. So maybe love meant being easy, like you're not asking too much, you're not rocking the boat. Okay. Maybe for you, love meant being the good girl. the one who didn't cause the problems, who kept the peace, who figured it all out on her own. Or maybe love meant being needed. You were the one that was being helpful. You were the one that everyone relied on. So for some of us, love meant being emotionally aware long before we should have been. We were already reading the rooms. We were already sensing the mood, adjusting ourselves so things felt okay. I'm not sure if you are one of those girlies, but I certainly was. And it wasn't even that anybody said anything out loud, but it was felt. So we learned this pattern of if I'm understanding, I'm going to be loved. If I don't need too much, then I'll belong. If I stay quiet, things are going to stay calm. Okay. These are some of the things that we learned early on that, again, it's not that your parents were telling you to act this way or, in relationships, no one was saying it, but it was a felt response. You felt it. You knew how to read the room. And listen, none of this makes us weak, you guys, but what it does make you is adaptive. We become very adaptive. And these patterns were often formed in our younger years when we didn't yet have the power to leave, we didn't have the power to speak up, we didn't have the power to set boundaries. So we just did the best we could with what we had. And we became very adaptive, we became very accommodating, we became super strong in our little bodies. We got strong and we became probably really self sufficient. And at the time, those traits helped us to survive. But here's where it gets tricky. What helped us actually survive doesn't always help us thrive. What helps us survive does not always help us thrive. Because as adults, those same patterns can turn into the self abandonment. We say yes when we mean no. We over explain instead of just trusting ourselves. We feel like we have to over explain everything. We downplay our feelings so we don't seem like, quote unquote, too much. Because goodness knows we don't want to be too much. And we convince ourselves our needs can wait. Again and again, we do this and we don't even realize that we're doing it. We just know that we feel tired. We start to feel disconnected. We even might start to feel a little resentment. Or we start to feel lonely, even in our relationships, even in our healthy relationships. And then we tell ourselves, gosh, I should just be grateful. Other people have it way worse. But again, you guys, I'm all about the gratitude. But that doesn't mean to erase yourself. It doesn't mean that. And love does not mean disappearing. And I want to bring this into a real life moment because, truth be told, oh my gosh, this is quite the month, let me tell you. I told you last week that we are going to have my husband on, and yes, we are. And then we both got, well, I should say, I fell a little under the weather, and then he is not feeling totally up to par. And I told you that this is like totally freaking him out that he has to show up on here, but in a super cute little way. Let me tell you, I think he's also kind of like curious about it. But, anyways, point being is that I had to switch things around so we could tape after we're not feeling so crummy. And I was like, okay, so that means the love series is going to change a little bit. And it was actually going through this experience. And this is what often prompts me to write and record an episode is what I'm going through in my own life or what my clients are going through. These are the things that spark me to decide, is this something we want to expand on? And I want to share with you that in real life, I have been going through it a little bit myself because it doesn't just show up in romantic relationships. This is where, the self-abandonment isn't just in the romantic relationships. It can show up in our friendships too. So recently I kind of caught myself slipping back into this old pattern of mine. There were moments, and you guys, you know what? I'm just going to be honest. I am still in it and navigating it. So this is good for me to come back to this centered, grounded space to remember that I matter and I don't need to self-abandon. But anyways, here's what was and is happening. There have always been moments where I have felt overlooked. And it typically is not intentionally excluded, but it's not being fully included either. And goodness, instead of saying something, I downplay it. Usually, I tell myself, it's fine. They're busy. Don't make it awkward. These are the things that I say to myself, right? You're okay. You're strong. You don't need to get caught up in all of this stuff. This is just triggering you from other things that have happened in the past. And if I'm being really honest, there are parts of me that don't want to seem needy. I know, I'm still working through that. And there have been parts of me that don't want to seem like I'm too sensitive or I don't want to disrupt the dynamic that maybe they have going within their circle now that has kind of changed. I was part of that circle at one point, and then now the dynamics have changed a little bit. Anyways, I think it's because people often see me as the one who is always fine. And right now, I can see because I cried a bucket of tears to my mom. Truth be told, this is me being super vulnerable the other day. And she was like, Noelle, I think people see that your business is growing and that you're leading these communities, you're connecting with people, you have pictures of yourself with other people all the time without them realizing that, yes, I'm building relationships, but this is also my job. These events that I put on, these social events that I put on, and this community, yes, I get to be in it, but there's also a place that there's like these blurred lines because it's also my job. They're paying to be a part of a membership that I am curating. So I still have this responsibility, right? So the assumption is she's good. But here's the truth that I don't think we say enough out loud. Just because someone is strong doesn't mean that we don't get lonely. Just because someone might lead something or is in a leadership position doesn't mean that they don't want to be included. And for me, just because someone creates community doesn't mean that they don't long to belong to. This is why I actually create communities because it has always been an issue in my life. And I'm like, how can I solve that problem? I create them. I create the communities that I long for. This is like a new thing that I'm experiencing, which is really interesting. And I've had to do a lot of self reflection through it. And I had this moment where I realized something important that I created spaces for women to gather and to connect and to be seen. But as I was thinking about it and I was reflecting, I still don't necessarily let myself be seen. I operate in love. Yes, I always try to operate in love. And I always try to be super understanding and gracious and compassionate and all the things. But I wasn't, and maybe I'm not, haven't been completely honest. And that's where the line shows up because love that requires you to, I'm like slurring my words here. What was I saying? Love that requires you to silence yourself isn't love. That's where the self-abandonment comes in. And that old pattern starts to tell us just be the bigger person. You don't need to say anything, it's not that big of a deal. But inside, something has been happening to me. And when I or we don't voice what we're feeling, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't. It just turns into this weird distance. And sometimes there is that quiet resentment. And sometimes what I think happens, and I've noticed is happening, is that subtle pulling away that we don't notice until now when I'm like really facing it and really in the thick of it and really doing the reflection in it, right? So I've had to really ask myself and pause, what would it look like to love and stay with myself, to honor what I'm feeling without blaming myself, and to acknowledge my experience without making anyone wrong? No one's wrong. Because, like I said earlier, it's not intentional. But to remember that being loving doesn't mean being invisible. And so, this is where things start to shift and change because there is a difference between loving and losing yourself. And the line between the two is often, like I said, it's very subtle. So, here's what self abandonment sounds like. And I said it a little bit earlier, but I want to be really clear. This is what self abandonment's going to sound like. It's fine when it's not. I don't need anything. I'll deal with it later. I don't want to make this a thing. Ooh, gosh, I say that all the time. Oh my gosh, I say that all the time. Whereas love, on the other hand, sounds like this matters to me. This really matters. I need time to think about that. Or I'm not comfortable with this. Really like acknowledging I'm not comfortable with this and I'm allowed to take up space too. So here's the truth that I want you to sit with if you have experienced this or are experiencing it, whether it be in friendships or maybe it is in your relationship with your partner, whatever that is. Love that costs you your nervous system is not love, it's actually attachment. Because real love does not require you to disappear. It doesn't ask you to betray your own truth, and it does not punish you for having needs. We all get to have needs, you guys. And operating in the frequency of love, like we talked about last week, means leading with compassion. It means leading with empathy, leading with openness. But it also means loving yourself enough to stay connected to yourself while you do that. While you do that. And, oh gosh, I think I'm trying to remember if I mentioned this on a podcast or if this was in our Women Rising, one of our episodes. We really talked about boundaries, and some people just hate that word boundaries. But I want to say, love without boundaries becomes resentment. And love without self respect becomes being exhausted. When you do not have self respect, you're going to get really tired. And when you don't have boundaries for yourself or others, then guess what? You're going to totally start to feel resentment. You are. I mean, it's just part of the cycle. But loving from wholeness is going to be different because it's going to be calmer, it's going to be steadier. It's not going to require you to be someone you're not. You don't have to explain yourself into being loved. You don't have to stay silent to keep the peace. You don't have to give more to someone hoping that they will finally meet you there. Because how many times do we do that? Where we just give and give and give and give, and we're hoping that we're going to get that in return or that someone else is going to meet us there and they're going to give right back. It means that you can be kind and clear. You can have that conversation. You can be kind and clear. You can be open to things, but you can also have the boundaries and being honest with them, with still loving them and having compassion. Because the right people don't need you to disappear in order to stay. I want you to hear me out when I say that again. The right people don't need you to disappear in order to stay. So, operating in love doesn't mean tolerating what hurts you. It means honoring yourself enough to tell the truth. That's love with having massive amounts of integrity. That's love that's going to be sustainable. That's love that's going to feel safe in your body, in your heart, in your nervous system. My husband and I just had this conversation, as a matter of fact, today, actually, over lunch. We talked about this. We talked about how we notice in relationships, and again, it comes up. Like, this isn't something that, never happens. No, it comes up. It's just a matter of how long you're going to allow it to stay there. So we were talking about this because I was saying, gosh, I just notice it's very interesting to me. I notice a lot of women that are afraid to ask their husbands for something or to share their true vulnerability with their husbands because they're afraid of what their response is going to be. They're afraid of what they're going to think of them. And again, I've been there. I've been there. I even made a joke to my husband about it not too long ago. I was like, oh boy, because he says, what did he say to me the other day? I was so sick. I was feeling so icky, totally hormonal, on my cycle, just like not in a great place. And I looked pretty rough. Like, I looked pretty rough. And we were driving in the car, and he's like, because I said to him, I go, babe, you're so cute. And he goes, so are you, babe. He's like, I love you. And I just giggled. I'm like, yeah, you love my snot-nosed, losing my hair from hormones, blah, blah, blah. I just went on and on down this list of like how I just felt so crappy. And I was thinking about that because I thought, I would have been afraid to say that out loud before because I would have been like, oh my gosh, what if deep down he is like, yeah, no, this is not fun for me. This is, yeah, you look pretty ragged. Like, you've been looking pretty rough lately with the hormone situation. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think I used to be afraid to say those things. Whereas now I'm just like, you know what? It's a season and I matter, even though I'm going through a season of like some ick right now, I still matter. And he still operates from such a place of love. I can't wait for you guys to get to know him. He's literally so opposite of me in so many ways, but yet he really operates from the frequency of love on all levels of his life, in all relationships, which is really cool. He's taught me a lot. But anyway, my point being is that we just need to be honest with ourselves and not lose ourselves when we are love, when we are operating in the frequency of love. We need to still honor ourselves. So I don't want you to leave this episode feeling like you need to fix anything. Instead, I want you to just gently notice some maybe patterns, maybe some of the way that you're feeling that you kind of bury it down or you just say, I'm fine, and you move on. So here are just some simple reflections you can carry out with you this week is where have I been quiet to keep the peace? Are there areas in my life and relationships that I've been quiet? What need of mine have I been minimizing? Do I really need something that I haven't been making a big deal about? And what would love look like if I stayed with myself? What would love look like there? So I'd love for you to do that. No pressure. just awareness, just to be aware of that, because awareness is where everything starts to change. When I started to reflect, because I was going to bed and I was like ruminating on some thoughts. I was like, do I say anything? Do I not? Don't want to make a big deal about it. All the things I mentioned to you in the podcast, I was doing. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm aware now. And things need to change. Things need to change. So I want to leave you with this. You are not too much. You guys are never too much. And you're not asking for too much. You don't have to lose yourself to be loved. Operating in the frequency of love includes you. It includes you. And it includes your truth. It includes your boundaries. It includes your needs. And for you to just be so whole, to just be whole, to be you. And you don't have to love less. You just need to stop leaving yourself behind if you are someone that's doing that. And I just want to say that I love you guys. I love this community, and I just always want to operate out of a place of love for you. And that's why, I say, please reach out. If there are topics that you are feeling like, I would love for you to touch on this, or maybe you have questions about our love series, within our love series, if there's something that you think would be something that we could chat about on the podcast or even just privately, I love that. I'm all about it. And I just want you to feel loved in your relationships, but also for you to love yourself in such a massive way that you never abandon yourself. And I just want to thank you so much for being here with me today. And I can't wait for next week. Oh my goodness, you guys, you're going to finally meet the husband, the spouse. He's going to be so embarrassed for me saying that. But I don't think he listens to all these podcasts anyways. He hears my clips and he hears me recording every once in a while. But just want to say happy love day every day. It's not just on Valentine's Day. And I also want to say keep rising, keep shining, and remember your best day is right here waiting for you. All right, my friends, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.